Batman's story is of a man who was shaped by tragedy, but instead of letting the tragedy govern him, this man used it as a motivation to become stronger, to become a better version of himself, while making his world a better place. But Absolute Batman is different. He is all that Batman is, but more. This guy is the people's Batman and maybe someone we need, but do not deserve. And in this video, we are gonna explore the first 14 issues of Absolute Batman, and this saga feels like the first chapter in Absolute Batman's life, his year one. But before I dive in, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous long reads. Oh, and you will notice that the first and the last issues have been explained in more detail than the rest. That's because the first one sets up everything we need to know, and the last one is just awesome with 2 absolutely and ridiculously great duels happening in the past and the present. And now, let's get started. Issue 1, The Zoo, Part 1 of 6. The comic begins with a school trip to Gotham Zoo, and leading the students was Bruce's father, Thomas Wayne. Young Bruce, who was also a part of the group, got enticed with a flyer that spoke about the bat enclosure, which tells us that this Bruce was always fascinated with bats and not scared of them, so much so that Thomas had to ask him to join the other students as there'd be a lot of time for bats later. But this was simply a flashback, the first of many that we'd see across the comic book. Anyway, in the very next panel, we open in present-day Gotham and meet a familiar figure riding a motorcycle, like he was the leader of a biker gang. It had been quite a while since this man had been to Gotham. The man was looking for a very specific place, but despite 3 laps of the city, he failed to find it. It turns out that the Gotham he remembered had changed quite a bit, and although it was prettier, taller, brighter, he was not sure if he liked the new version of Gotham. The man then stops his bike in front of Gotham Deli and takes off his helmet, which is when we learn that he was, in fact, Alfred Pennyworth. And in his own words, he was here to do some bad things. Meanwhile, a breaking news report claimed that a gang called the Party Animals slaughtered 9 people, including 2 cops. So yeah, although there was no visible organised crime on the streets, no one mugged you if you were in an alley behind a theatre and killed you for no reason, Gotham was still riddled with crime, the worst kind of crime. Alfred was a Brit, and I guess like the Chinese and the Indians, he loved his tea. From the deli owner named Amir, he takes his favourite box of tea and goes straight into his room, which happens to be right beside the deli. As for Amir, he left Kabul, Afghanistan, during the occupation years nearly 20 years ago, which is where Alfred and Amir probably met, since our guy was on a tour there. As for Mr. Pennyworth's room, it was more of an armoury for an entire SWAT team. Pistols, shotguns, automatics and semi-automatics, rifles, grenades, ammunition. It had everything. Needless to say, Alfred kept this place secured and ready for any exigency. After settling down with his coffee, he calls his daughter, Julia, who lived in Gotham, and tells her about his arrival. However, from the voicemail he leaves for her, we learn that they have become estranged, yet he misses her tremendously. I know that these little details might feel a bit over the top, but the comic is just setting up the story, and I think it is important for me to tell you the dynamics that characters share with each other. It will only help you and I better understand the depth of this magnificent story, one that totally deserves to be turned into a movie, or even an HBO TV show. Anyway, I digress. Now, although it will soon be revealed, I think this is the correct time to tell you that Alfred was actually an MI6 agent in the comic, the branch of the British military intelligence that deals with external threats, something like the CIA. So, after the talks with his daughter Julia's voicemail, Alfred opens a secure video call with his handlers. From them, he learns that he is supposed to closely observe the Party Animals, which you may have learnt by now was an all-new terrorist group that was haunting Gotham. They wear ape masks and commit horrific crimes like burning daycares and dancing outside. While scores of kids die inside, they sometimes bind a mum and her child to a bumper just to see which one of them first. Well, let's not complete that sentence. And off late, the murder rate had risen to a whopping 700%. Alfred's orders were clear: observe only, do not engage, no matter what the circumstances were, no matter how many people died inside. Furthermore, the MI6 agent in Delhi is also told about the masked vigilante that has been operating in Gotham City, and as far as this masked vigilante is concerned, Alfred is allowed to engage and even neutralize him if he proves to be a hindrance to the surveillance. Next thing we know, Alfred leaves his hideout, only to find that someone had stolen his motorbike, something that greatly pisses him off since his handlers had fed the coordinates to the bike. The following morning, we open at Crime Alley, more specifically at Croc's Gym, which was the only building on that ruined street that was still standing. Inside, there's young Bruce Wayne, huge and muscular, but still training like there's no tomorrow. While training, he remembers the day his father died at the hands of a gunman, but more on that later. For now, let's just remember that it was the day of the trip to the zoo. These flashes of memory, these troublesome pieces of memory, make Bruce lose his cool and get carried away so much that he destroys the punching bag itself. Kinda like how Captain America once did in the movies. Bruce immediately apologizes to the owner of Croc's Gym, Waylon Jones, and tells him that he would pay for the damages as soon as he gets the next paycheck. Waylon does not think too much of it and asks Bruce to join him and the others at the poker game. Others like Harvey, Ozzy, and the likes, basically. Bruce's future rogues gallery. However, Bruce refuses to join the game. Next, Waylon asks if he would at least attend the town meeting being held to discuss the party animals, but once again, Bruce does not show an interest and simply leaves. In all honesty, this guy knows how to brood. Meanwhile, the leaders of Gotham's apex crime families, the likes of Maroni and Falcone, visit Roman Sionis, the leader of the party animals. It is here that we learn that Roman has an obsession with masks and possesses a number of them, including masks based on the faces of figures like Socrates and Martin Luther King. Maroni and Falcone tell Sionis that his ways are too brutal, that they would not allow the unchecked killing, especially that of women and children. But they make the mistake of telling him how they can simply take him out, thanks to their men, their cousins, and friends. At this point, Sionis reveals that he has already killed all the members of their gangs, all their soldiers, and proceeds to brutally kill the two crime lords. And the hands that actually did the killings belong to Sionis' supposed wife and child, each of them wearing black masks or helmets or whatever you want to call it. These few panels proved just how powerful Roman Sionis and his party animals, his henchmen, were. But then back in Gotham, these trigger-happy maniacs were about to meet their greatest challenge yet. So, remember the town meeting that Raylan was talking about? Yeah, so that's where the next panel opens. It seems that Gordon served his city well as police commissioner and then moved on to become the mayor, while Bullock took his place as the commissioner. The people of Gotham were frustrated with the incompetency and inefficiency that the cops and the administration was showing in regards to stopping the new terrorists, so the Gothamites were demanding the resignation of Mayor Gordon. Outside, Alfred was watching this whole scene unfold from a distance, which is when he sees the party animals approaching the city hall. He knows that once this manic army reaches the gates of the city hall, blood would spill like water from an overflowing river, and he requests permission from his handlers to engage if need be, but they refuse and remind him that his only objective was to observe and report, nothing more, not unless it was the masked vigilante that we know as Batman. Inside the city hall, people were still furious, and Martha Way, who worked in Mayor Gordon's office, reminds them that this was exactly the kind of bickering and infighting that the party animals wanted, and that they should work together towards finding a solution. But before she could finish her statement, party animals attack the building, bursting in and throwing a smoke grenade. Seeing the chaos about to ensue, Gordon tells them to spare the public and deal only with him, a request they grant when one of the party animals shoots Gordon down. However, they were about to launch a massacre when they suddenly got pulled outside, while the door slammed shut behind the crazy killers. Outside, however, an army of party animals was gathering, and the police personnel stationed outside knew that they were gonna be next. This is when Barbara Gordon, who is a Gotham City cop, decides to secure a perimeter and opens the door only to find the Caped Crusader, Gotham's Dark Knight, on the other side of the door, telling her that she should not open the door, no matter what she hears. Alfred was still observing the events unfold, and he tells his superiors that Batman had arrived at the scene, and he watches as the Silent Guardian fights to protect his city and its people from the so-called party animals. The young Batman was outgunned and outnumbered, but that did not stop him from doing what was necessary, and and that too with the skills and efficiency of a veteran fighter. This new Batman has a number of things about his suit that make him unique. I mean, he can literally walk on his wings like bats. There's an axe studded in his chest that he uses to slice off bad guys' wrists. His wings end in hooks that seem like an upgraded version of a grappling hook with more maneuverability and control. Anyway, Batman continues his assault on the bad guys and impresses Alfred with his skills. Alfred had many an opportunity to kill Batman, but he chose to watch. He chose to see how the masked vigilante fared against a second, bigger wave of party animals. Alfred notes how Batman's attacks are superficially brutal and how he looks deliberately frightening, but the man does not land any fatal blows, always missing a major artery or vein by an inch or a centimetre. Seeing all his fellow maniacs get taken down by Batman, the biggest party animal of the group comes forward and asks Batman to stand down, but the young hero simply uses his axe to slice his wrist off. This is when he screams at the party animal crowd to run away, and that's exactly what they do, without a second thought. Finally, a gang of party animals had been stopped. This is when Alfred gets the direct order from his handlers to take Batman down, and Alfred proceeds to do just the same. The old man sneaks up to the young hero and orders him to stand down. Alfred thought that his custom-made DC-34 automatic shotgun would intimidate Batman, but he did not know that the young man was not afraid of anything. Worse, this guy played with other people's fears. Batman immediately knocks him down and flees with his shotgun, something that gravely pissed Alfred because apart from his, there were just two more in the entire world, a prized possession. Interestingly enough, Alfred quickly deduces who Batman was, and the biggest clue was the shape of the wings in Batman's suit, which resembled the design of the winning entry of a collapsible bridge that Bruce had made as a child of 5th grade. Armed with this knowledge, Alfred soon figures everything about Batman, and here's where we get Bruce's backstory, before he became Batman. Alfred finds out, and we learn that Bruce was just a regular guy, a 24-year-old engineer. His mum is a social worker and dad was a teacher. Bruce grew up in Crime Alley, with high friends in low places, but a tight group. He was smart and excelled in school. So much so that he showed near genius levels when Martha and Thomas had his IQ tested. Then, in 5th grade, Bruce won a student engineering competition for creating a mobile collapsible bridge that could be used to bring aid to locations hit by catastrophic damage due to war or nature. This origami-like design was based on the wings of a bat, and the prize for this great achievement was that fateful trip to the Gotham Zoo where his father was shot dead by a gunman, and Thomas's last words were, "Bruce, whatever you hear, do not open the door." Exactly the same words he said to Barbara at the City Hall. After this incident, Bruce lost himself for a while and lashed out at the world with rage, committing crimes, but then he found himself again. Something inspired him. That's when he straightened out and went back to school to bag a scholarship to the best university in the state. Despite being great at sports, he faked an injury and devoted his time to learning the subjects that would later help him in his fight against crime. Subjects like chemistry, criminal psychology, military theory, sociocultural history, and the likes. After this, he comes home and joins various departments like the power grid, sanitation, water department, and even interned at the City Hall, where he studied micro and macro public policy. And all this helped him learn about the anatomy of his city. And finally, he started working as an engineer. Alfred was still on to him. He considered Bruce to be a crusader, and like all crusaders, Bruce also had a weakness. His was his mother, Martha, and although he could kill the young man, he could not, because Bruce was just a kid, much like his own daughter, Julia. Later that night, Pennyworth tracks Wayne down to his lair at the top of a skyscraper, a choice that Pennyworth lauds. Just as the MI6 agent threatens about shutting Bruce down, the latter points the custom shotgun at its previous owner. Alfred was sure that Bruce would not break his moral code of no killing and not fire, but Bruce does, that too, at point-blank range. However, this only incapacitated Alfred, and Bruce had tweaked the gun to be made non-lethal. Seeing the window of opportunity, Batman escaped with Alfred's stolen bike by riding it out of a glass window of the skyscraper. So yeah, it was Bruce who had stolen it. Clearly, Alfred was not the only one who was good at following targets. This is where the first issue comes to an end, but its epilogue reveals that Alfred had been called to Gotham and forced to to ditch his previous mission, where he tracked a certain target for 5 years. As it turns out, this target was a billionaire whose name no one knew, but as no one has ever heard him laugh at anything, he was most famously known as the Joker. Let's jump straight into the second issue, shall we? Issue 2, The Zoo, Part 2 of 6. Bruce's life split into 2 parts on the day his father died, and the moment that line was drawn, he stood on the wrong side of it. Thomas Wayne's body blocked the bat enclosure door at the Gotham Zoo, and Bruce stayed inside while a swarm of bats closed in on him. Add a dead parent, an enclosure full of animals that should have terrified any sane child, and a cage door that refused to budge, and you get the kind of memory that never fades. 14 years later, he still lived inside that memory's shadow. In the present, Batman had already spent 2 weeks tearing through the party animals. Ever since his clash with Alfred, Bruce had been on a single-track mission with no signs of fatigue or hesitation. He worked during the day, fought at night, and then somehow found a spare moment to visit the man who killed his father at Blackgate. Alfred thought Bruce would eventually slow down, rest, or at least breathe. Instead, Bruce became the city's worst insomniac. Alfred stayed in Gotham far longer than he had planned. He told himself that he was only helping Batman so the mission could end quickly, but the truth was more tangled than he liked to admit. He used his skills to block police surveillance and counter whatever tech the party animals used to trace Batman. He talked himself into believing all this protection was necessary to gather intel, but deep down, he knew he didn't want to watch Bruce walk into a death trap. As Alfred tracked Bruce's movements, he uncovered something strange: a network of underground bolt holes scattered across the city. When plotted on a map, they formed the shape of a bat. He did not know whether to admire this or worry about Bruce's state of mind. A week later, Alfred's handler reached the end of his patience. Batman had become too volatile an element, too unpredictable for a mission that required clarity and control. Alfred received a direct order: remove all protections and let the party animals to take him. A cold instruction delivered without hesitation. Alfred stalled for as long as he could, then finally obeyed. The consequences came quickly. Without Alfred's interference, the party animals tracked Batman's base to the empty skyscraper he used as a temporary lair. They swarmed the tower, eager to rip him apart. Alfred watched the entire assault through the building's CCTV. He told himself that Bruce should have stepped back long before this moment, that he had brought this on himself. But then the top floors erupted. Bruce had anticipated the attack and detonated charges planted across the upper levels. Fire spilled out from the structure, and when the flames settled, the shattered silhouette of the skyscraper formed the shape of Batman's cowl. 2 jets of flame poured from window cavities, giving the impression of burning eyes. Alfred stared at the sight in silence. He did not know whether Bruce had done something bold or something reckless, but either way, he knew the kid was still alive. Elsewhere in Gotham, Martha Wayne visited Jim Gordon in the hospital. Gordon lay in bed with injuries from the City Hall attack, looking more tired than wounded. He confessed that his deputy mayor had resigned, leaving the administration in shambles, and the polls hinted that he would lose the next election. None of this surprised Martha. What did surprise her was Gordon's next question: "How's Bruce?" She had no good answer. Bruce's retreat into silence had begun the day Thomas died. After the zoo shooting, he locked himself in his room and stopped talking to everyone, even his closest friends. His medal from the engineering competition hung on the wall for half an hour before he tore it down and hurled it out of the window. Gordon remembered finding him in the bat enclosure that night. Martha remembered everything that followed. Later that night, Bruce did something he had not done in a long time. He joined Wayland's poker game. Their old gang had gathered: Harvey, Ozzy, Eddie, but Selina was missing because she was somewhere abroad. Bruce was not there for cards or nostalgia. He came with a mask from a party animal and a list of questions. He claimed he found the mask during repairs at City Hall. Eddie, who had a mind built for wires and chips, examined it and spotted something Bruce had missed: a GIS chip buried inside. If decoded, it could reveal where the party animals planned to strike next. Bruce had already tried and failed to break through the mask's security, but Eddie grabbed the challenge with the enthusiasm Bruce had counted on. Then came Ozzy. Bruce asked if the party animals were pressing into any other gang's turf. Ozzy said no, they were tearing Gotham apart without any interest in territory. Finally, Harvey. Bruce asked if the party animals' attacks were designed to sink Gordon's election chances. Harvey admitted Gordon was already sliding in the polls long before these maniacs surfaced. What he did reveal, though, was far more interesting. Hamilton Hill, the former mayor trying to take his seat back, had received a massive burst of campaign money from an unnamed benefactor. Hill himself called it his golden chest. Bruce switched back into the suit and broke into Hill's campaign office. He reached the computer and found a folder named Arc M. The title made him think of treasure chests. Gold, arcs, the kind of symbolism someone like Hill might use. But when he opened it, Roman Sionis filled the screen. Roman greeted him calmly. He claimed he would give Batman anything he wanted if Bruce survived what came next. That warning arrived seconds before the party animals and the GCPD closed in on the building. Sionis had orchestrated a perfect trap. Batman fought his way through a wave of attackers and dove down an elevator shaft. At the bottom, he found a hatch that led into a chamber buried beneath the building. At first, it looked like a control room. Then he saw Alfred. Alfred asked him to listen. He insisted that the party animals were not what they seemed and that they had a common goal. Bruce granted him 30 seconds. Alfred asked if Bruce had a car nearby so they could escape. Bruce lowered his foot onto a gas pedal and replied, "You're standing in it." The walls trembled. The room lurched forward. Bruce had turned a two-story construction vehicle into a mobile escape platform. It tore through the building's outer wall and thundered down the street, tossing police cars aside as if they were plastic toys. Alfred was not sure whether to respect this or question his life choices. The story returned to the night after Thomas's death. Bruce stayed in his room, locked away from everyone, including Martha. His engineering medal lay somewhere on the pavement outside. Then, Selina climbed through the window with the medal in her hand. She told Bruce to get up. She had no patience for grief or silence. She had her own ideas about how to pull him out of the darkness. And that is where this chapter of the saga ends, not with a chase or an explosion, but with a simple moment between two kids who had already lost too much. Issue 3. The Zoo. Part 3 of 6, the Batmobile roared through Gotham with the kind of power that made both the GCPD and the party animals forget why they had started chasing it in the first place. Batman sat locked into the driver's seat, as if the vehicle were a natural extension of him. Alfred clung to whatever he could find, which in this case happened to be a gun nest that Bruce had installed as casually as someone installs a coffee holder. Bruce told him that his 30 seconds started now, so Alfred, who had served in more war zones than Gotham had alleys, took that command seriously. He returned fire on the party animals while laying out the theory he had pieced together, which was that Roman Sionis, the man parading around as the face of Gotham's newest scourge, was also Black Mask, a mercenary legend whispered about in circles where body armor counted as formal wear. Alfred said Sionis had the resources of a small country and the temperament of someone who would burn that country for fun, which made him effectively unstoppable in a prolonged fight. But Alfred had overheard an interesting detail during Sionis's message to Bruce. Sionis offered a deal. That meant he felt pressed for time. In Alfred's view, if Bruce accepted the offer to stand down temporarily, Sionis would tone down the violence and hand Bruce enough cash to make a dent in Gotham's problems. Meanwhile, Alfred's agency would track the transaction and eventually swoop in to arrest him. Bruce said nothing. Instead, he told Alfred to prove his worth by taking over the rear turret. Alfred climbed in, took aim with calm precision, and blew out the tires of their pursuers one car at a time. They reached the docks, and Alfred asked if Bruce had an escape plan. Bruce told him to pull a lever. Alfred assumed it controlled smoke or oil slick or something equally standard. Instead, it launched him high into the air before he splashed into the water. Bruce sealed the Batmobile and drove it straight into the bay. As the GCPD searched the docks, the Batmobile sank beneath the surface and entered a hidden tunnel that led directly into one of Bruce's bolt holes. Meanwhile, the past continued to pull at him in quiet ways. On the night Thomas died, Selina had climbed through Bruce's window with his engineering medal. She dragged him out across the rooftops of Crime Alley and taught him how to keep his balance on wires that swayed with every step. She led him to a rooftop crowded with feral cats. Flats, a place she liked because no adult bothered to go there. He asked how her new foster home treated her, and she told him she had already run away from it the 4th time that year. Bruce offered her a room with him and Martha, but she refused and told him never to ask her that again. They eventually dropped down into an alley and crept through the back door of a movie theatre. An old Zorro film began playing. That was the same movie Thomas had planned to take Bruce to on the night he died. The coincidence hit Bruce harder than he expected, but Selena refused to let him fade into his grief. She told him to sit down, so he did. Back in the present, Bruce visited Eddie's makeshift lab, where Eddie had decided that the messy upgrades he had done to the place required a robot assistant. The robot, a clunky creation named Al, relayed Eddie's findings. The party animal's helmet did more than look menacing. It created an individual crypto wallet tied to a digital currency called Black Coin. Each crime committed by the wearer added Black Coin to the wallet. The network gave instructions, targets, and valuations. It ran through satellites and had thousands of users scattered across Gotham. Disrupting the system was nearly impossible. Eddie told Bruce to walk away, smash the mask, and stop this crusade. Bruce listened, then changed the subject. He received a call from Harvey, who had traced the ARC M fund to JK Holdings, a corporation that specialized in building black site prisons. These facilities were not ordinary detention centers. They looked more like laboratories that used inmates for medical experiments, and the newest one, ARC M, sat on an island off Gotham's coast. Elsewhere, Harvey Bullock met Hamilton Hill on Roman Sionis' yacht. Hill asked Bullock to endorse his run for mayor, but Bullock refused, loyal to Gordon. Hill led him to meet Sionis. Bullock walked in, expecting a typical businessman. Instead, he found an MMA champion named Bibbo Bibowski on the mat with Sionis. The man claimed he wanted to help Bullock clean up Gotham and offered far better equipment and funding than Gordon ever could. While explaining this, Sionis easily overpowered Bibbo, broke the fighter's arm, and left him unconscious on the floor. Bullock understood what kind of man he stood before, but he did not know that Sionis was also Black Mask. All he saw was someone powerful who acted like he owned the city. Bruce dug deeper into JK Holdings and studied ARC M. Using a surveyor's scope, he watched the workers across the water and realized the scale of the compound. It dwarfed regular prisons. Whatever happened inside those walls did not fall under any jurisdiction that Gotham recognized. The past pulled at him again. In the theater, Bruce had tried to slip out, but Selena blocked him and told him he had talents that could matter if he stopped letting fear dictate his future. She said the way forward was the only direction worth considering. Before Bruce could reply, their friends jumped out from behind the seats and scared him. Selena laughed, and the group sat together to watch the film. Martha watched from the back row, tired from grief, yet grateful that Bruce had people who refused to let him collapse into silence. The next morning, Bruce arrived at Martha's apartment before sunrise. He told her she should lie low until the situation in the city improved. Instead, she told him she had accepted Gordon's offer to be the new deputy mayor. Bruce warned her that this would paint a target on her back. Martha said that if she wanted Gotham to survive, she had to help rather than hide. He asked what would happen if the job was too big for her. She told him that his father would still try, and so would she. Across the city, Alfred parked outside the elementary school where Julia taught. He watched her from the safety of a van and left before she could glance in his direction. Bullock soon endorsed Hill publicly and loudly in exchange for Sionis' resources. With that done, the party animals escalated their violence. The next day marked the anniversary of Thomas Wayne's death. Bruce returned to the zoo, which had closed permanently after the shooting. He stood inside the abandoned place where his childhood had ended and contacted Sionis through the helmet. Black Mask offered him $200 million to stand down for 1 week and promised to scale back the party animals' attacks. Bruce accepted, though his voice carried no triumph. He did not know if he had made a deal with a criminal or taken the first step into a deeper trap. He only knew that Gotham needed a pause, and this was the only way to buy it. Issue 4, The Zoo, Part 4 of 6. Bruce Wayne's earliest nights as Batman were far rougher than the legend suggests. Not long after he returned to Gotham from college, he built his first costume in a garage that smelled of gasoline and rust. He aimed for terror rather than stealth. The suit had red contact lenses that glowed, a voice distorter that made him sound like a graveyard spirit, fake fangs, and metal claws fitted to the backs of his gloves. He wanted the streets to believe Gotham had birthed its own vampire. area. That night, he dropped into Crime Alley and attacked the 10 Thieves, a gang that tormented residents for protection money. He hissed, screeched, and tore through them with ease. Their leader, Raph, watched his men fall and froze. Bruce knocked the man to the ground, pulled out a gun and aimed at his forehead. The moment stretched. Bruce remembered his engineering project from school, the one he had based on bats. He had designed his first version to look massive, strong, and intimidating, so anyone inside it would feel protected. Thomas had asked him whether intimidation was really the goal. That question stayed buried somewhere in Bruce's head, and now it surfaced. He lowered the gun. He swung away without firing a shot, landed in his garage, and burned both the suit and the gun. He knew the act should have felt triumphant. Instead, it revealed the obvious. He had been chasing small gangs on small streets while Gotham fed on bigger rot. The 10 Thieves could vanish tomorrow, and another crew would inherit the same corners. Fear alone was not a plan. He needed scale. He turned his attention to the pipeline that flooded the city with illegal guns and drugs from Florida. Gotham's underworld called it the Orange Blossom Special, or OBS. Everything came in through produce trucks packed with citrus, so the name stuck. The operation belonged to the Maroney and Falcone families, two groups with deep ties to the city's businesses and enough contacts in the GCPD to make themselves untouchable. Taking down street thugs did nothing as long as the OBS kept feeding the system. Bruce built a new suit, still eerie, still able to strike fear, but toned down and less theatrical than the vampire guys. His tools became smarter. He intercepted a gun shipment by using a remote-controlled jack he had made entirely out of parts he bought online. He stopped the truck without anyone realizing what had happened until it was too late. The move felt smart, efficient, and much more purposeful, but something still felt off. This was closer to what Batman should be, but not quite the full picture. Memories of his second bridge design stirred. That version drew inspiration from how bats adapted to different landscapes. The design had movable sections and flexible load points. Thomas had liked it, but asked Bruce if he was sure he understood what made a bat at its core. He then told Bruce that he once wanted to be a heart surgeon because his father had died of a heart attack right in front of him, but he never reached medical school. He became a teacher instead. He said he still helped children feel safe, maybe not by saving their lives directly, but by preparing them for a world that rarely cared about safety. Bruce heard the story differently now. Fear alone did not transform anything. People needed power and agency, not a guardian that lurked in the dark and frightened them into submission. Bruce left Gotham for a while, not to escape, but to understand the mission properly. He traveled across the country and revisited the feeling he had when he created his final bridge design. That design had been the one that won the competition because he discovered how to merge all the strong elements from earlier attempts and strip away what did not matter. It became lightweight, adaptable, and easy to deploy anywhere, even in disaster zones. Anyone could use it without asking for permission from those who controlled resources. It gave power back to regular people. That idea stuck with him as he planned what Batman must eventually become. He also remembered the day he spoke at Joe Chill's sentencing. Bruce had been honest in a way he had never been before or after. He told Chill that the morning of the zoo trip had been the happiest of his life. He said he would never feel happiness like that again. Then he said he hated him. Bruce left before Chill spoke because he did not care about explanations or motives. What mattered was the outcome. With those memories settled in his mind, he returned to Gotham. He built the wings of his new suit. He mapped the city's arteries and carved out bolt holes in the sewers and the higher floors of abandoned skyscrapers. He studied the movements of the elite and the influence they wielded behind closed doors. That led him to a charity gala attended by Gotham's wealthiest faces. Randall Powers, the owner of the trucking company used by the Maroneys and Falcones, walked around the ballroom shaking hands and assuring everyone that he had no idea criminals used his vehicles. He even endorsed stricter policies to prevent such abuses in the future. In private, he pushed hard to block every version of those laws. Bruce watched from above until a GCPD helicopter spotted him. He retreated before the officers could corner him. Later, he forced himself to visit Blackgate Penitentiary. He hated the place. He hated the long walk past the cells, but he also knew he could not move forward until he faced the man who had erased his childhood. He went to hear Joe Chill speak, not because he wanted answers, but because he needed closure, even if it arrived in the form of silence between two people who understood that one moment at a zoo had changed both their lives forever. If Batman had to exist, then Bruce had to understand exactly what he stood for. This journey, these early mistakes, and these choices shaped the mission far more than any dramatic rooftop moment ever would. Issue 5, The Zoo, Part 5 of 6. Batman rode through Gotham with the kind of focus that made the rest of the city fade into background noise. Every turn took him closer to the meeting spot he had agreed on with Black Mask. The party animals trailed him from rooftops, not brave enough to strike, but eager to see what their leader planned. Alfred watched too, keeping a quiet distance. His handlers called and told him the mission was effectively over, that they had all the intel they needed and he should leave Gotham immediately. Alfred said he would. He did not move. He stayed right where he was and kept his eyes on Bruce. At City Hall, Gordon and Martha watched the news announce Bullock's endorsement of Hamilton Hill. Gordon felt the blow deeper than the cameras could ever show. Bullock had been his partner, his friend, practically family, and this betrayal carried more weight than any election poll. Gordon apologized to Martha for dragging her into a doomed administration. She told him they were not done yet. She reminded him of when they met. She had been arrested at a protest, and he let her go instead of charging her. That decision made her believe he was one of the very few good people Gotham had. Gordon exhaled slowly and said he was sorry they would not be able to light the memorial light this year, the beam that honored the victims of the zoo shooting. He asked her to tell Bruce the same. Bruce arrived at the rooftop where Black Mask waited. Around them, the party animals stood in clusters while Alfred watched from a building across the street. Sionis informed Bruce that the money had been wired that morning to the account he had provided. Bruce replied that he had already used it. No one understood what that meant until Bruce revealed it himself. He had withdrawn every cent and used the stacks of cash to build a giant bat symbol on the memorial light at the abandoned zoo. With a remote trigger, the light surged to life and a massive bat symbol carved into the night sky. The entire city saw it. Sionis understood instantly. Bruce had never intended to stand down. The deal evaporated on the spot. The party animals charged in a frenzy, throwing themselves at Bruce as if sheer numbers would guarantee victory. Bruce fought through them with a kind of raw precision that left bodies across the roof. Black Mask then ordered the snipers on the surrounding rooftops to shoot, not at Batman, but at his own men. Bruce tried to shield the wounded party animals, but they swarmed him with nets and dragged him down. He clawed his way back up and seized Black Mask, only for Sionis to twist and dislocate Bruce's arm with almost careless ease. Bruce triggered a live broadcast signal and revealed that every second of their encounter had been sent to Gotham's news stations. He set the cache on fire and said Gotham needed a symbol to stand against the party animals. Sionis looked almost amused. He told Bruce he wasn't the hero of the story. Money was. Then he stepped back while his army beat Bruce, dabbed him, set him on fire, and finally pushed him off the roof. Bruce managed to slow the fall with a small parachute, but still hit the ground with a force that jarred through his whole body. He staggered to his feet and ran. The GCPD spotted him and unleashed tanks and attack helicopters. They chased him through the streets until he ducked into a parking garage. Barbara Gordon cut him off with her squad car, hit him hard enough to knock off his mask, and got out with her gun drawn. Bruce dropped into a manhole as she aimed. She told him to stop or she would shoot. Bruce looked back once and told her to shoot him. That single sentence froze her, because now she knew the secret of Batman. Barbara then lowered her weapon. He vanished underground without his cowl, and she radioed that she lost him. Elsewhere, Black Mask leaned into Batman's hidden camera with the confidence of a man who wanted the world to listen. He declared that the wealthy had broken the world long ago, and now everyone struggled to hold up a system that repaid them with nothing. He told Gotham to indulge while it could, to take what little pleasure remained before everything collapsed. His men placed crates all over the city. The money he had promised Batman was now a prize for anyone who dared take it. Alfred reached the Batcave and found Bruce sewing his own wounds, one thread at a time. Bruce said he had managed to plant a tracker on Black Mask and asked Alfred to set his arm. Alfred refused. He said Bruce had no idea what he unleashed tonight and that he would never help him again. He walked out with a final warning. Whatever happened next was Bruce's burden alone. But would Alfred Pennyworth really be able to leave Bruce Wayne alone? On the street, Gordon and Martha passed a group of men prying open one of Sionis's crates. Curious and concerned, they opened another one nearby. Inside were guns and masks. Three of the men from the first crate spotted Gordon and Martha and stepped toward them. Now armed and masked, ready to claim their share of the chaos chaos Sionis had promised. The night had started with a deal. It ended with a city on the verge of tearing itself apart. Issue 6, The Zoo, Part 6 of 6. Bruce reached Croc's gym, half dead on his feet. The door hung open, the lights were low, and Waylon Jones, massive, patient, and armed, stood guard. Croc had held the neighborhood together all night while the rest of Gotham tore itself apart. When he saw Bruce stagger inside, bruised, burned, and barely upright, he rushed toward him. Bruce told him the truth in one breath. He was Batman, and he needed help. Waylon froze for only a second before locking the door behind them. Gotham had gone too far for doubts. Out on the street, Martha Wayne picked up one of the masks from a fallen crate. The moment she put it on, the screen lit up with numbers that made no sense at first. Then she saw the bounties, acts of violence listed like bargains, thousands of dollars for small crimes, 6 figures for major ones, and $1 million for killing Jim Gordon. She tore the mask off. Before either of them could process it, a group of gunmen demanded the crate. Jim told Martha to run, but she refused to leave him. They had faced worse nights together. Neither planned to abandon the other now. Across town, Julia Pennyworth sat on a train headed towards the city's centre when the party animals attacked. The train lurched, passengers screamed, and masked men stormed inside. Julia tried to fight them off, but they dragged her out before anyone could help. By the time the train reached the next station, she was gone. Back at Croc's gym, Bruce revealed his identity to the entire group, that is Harvey, Ozzy, Eddie, and Waylon. They were furious that he had carried this alone. They felt betrayed that he had kept something so enormous from the people who had grown up with him, who had his back during his worst times, his most difficult times. Eddie broke the tension when he said he figured it out weeks ago, which only annoyed the others further. Even with the frustration hanging in the air, they agreed to help. Gotham was still their home. Bruce asked Eddie to run the party animals mask through his Riddler system. Eddie worked fast and found that the national network was too vast to dismantle, but Gotham's local server could be crashed if they reached it. Bruce understood instantly that Sionis kept it on his yacht. Ozzy offered his small plane, even though he was furious with Bruce for lying to them all these years. He yelled the entire time they flew, venting years of pent-up anger and every insult he had saved for a moment like this. They reached the yacht with barely enough fuel left for Ozzy to return. Bruce told him not to wait. Then he dove out of the plane and onto the deck. He landed straight on top of Sionis' DJ, Dr. Benjamin, flattening the man with a thud, and yep, Bruce didn't apologize for it. He strapped a life jacket onto Benjamin and threw him into the water. Another one of Sionis' inner circle, an aggressive little man named Kiddo, charged at Bruce with a knife. Bruce lifted him by the collar, put a life jacket on him too, and drop-kicked him off the side. The last companion, a woman only referred to as Sweetheart, took one look at Bruce, shrugged, and leapt overboard on her own. Bruce tossed her a life jacket out of courtesy. Meanwhile, the gunmen facing Gordon and Martha grew impatient. They demanded the masks from the crate, claiming they needed them for payment. Gordon refused, and Martha refused to leave his side. They both stood their ground even as the barrels of the guns rose. At the airport, Alfred's plan became clear. You see, he was the one who abducted Julia. He had chartered a private jet to escape Gotham with her before the city collapsed any further. Julia fought him, insisting she would not abandon her life, her students, or the people who mattered to her. Alfred remained unmoved. He cuffed her to a seat and ordered the plane to take off. Julia looked at him with pure heartbreak. She said that when she was a child, she dreamed of joining him on his missions, but now there was no place she wanted to be less than beside him. If they left, she would no longer see him as her father. Alfred hesitated for only a second, then repeated the order to the pilot. On the yacht, Sionis confronted Bruce with the kind of cold fury only a delusional man could possess. He tried to deliver more of his bleak philosophy, but Bruce had no patience for speeches. He tackled Sionis through a wall and into the ship's gym. He grabbed medicine balls one after another and smashed them into Black Mask's head. They crashed through the floor and into a chamber filled with the death masks of Sionis' victims. Bruce threw punch after punch, forcing Sionis to retreat. Sionis grabbed a thick cord and wrapped it around Bruce's neck. Bruce drove the ears of his cowl through Sionis' own mask and into his eyes. As Sionis screamed, Bruce put a life jacket on him and tossed him overboard. Sionis, barely conscious, whispered that Bruce had no idea what he had unleashed. Back in Gotham, the gunmen surrounding Martha and Gordon decided to kill Gordon and split the bounty, but spare Martha. They told her to walk away. She refused and said that if they planned to shoot anyone, they could start with her. Before they could fire, Bruce detonated detonated grenades inside the yacht, destroying the local server. The entire network shut down. The gunmen realized the payouts were gone. Their leader asked if that meant the money had vanished. Martha punched him clean in the face. The others scattered, embarrassed. The yacht exploded behind Bruce and tossed him into the water. He drifted unconscious into the depths until something metallic nudged him upward. The submerged Batmobile rose from below, lifting him toward the surface. The cockpit opened. Alfred climbed out and pulled Bruce inside. He started treating Bruce's wounds, muttering that if he remained in Gotham, then Bruce had no right to leave either. Far from Gotham, in a sterile medical chamber lit by cold lamps, a man with bleached white skin and green veins lay still on a table. His assistant reported that Black Mask had failed. The man smiled faintly and told him to find Bane. And that brings us to the close of the Zoo mini-arc. Let's dive right into the 6th issue and the next arc. Issue 7, Absolute Zero Part 1. A month passed after the party animals tore Gotham apart, and the city tried to pretend it had healed. It hadn't. Hamilton Hill crushed Jim Gordon in the mayoral election and then declared martial law, a decision he claimed was meant to protect citizens from Batman. Most people knew it was about control, not protection. Police checkpoints appeared on corners that never needed them. Drones circled the skyline, and the city felt tense in a way even Gotham wasn't used to. Waylon, Harvey, Eddie, and Ozzy gathered in Crime Alley for a quiet memorial, Matches. Malone had been one of their own, another kid from the neighborhood who never had much but always managed to get by with a smirk and a lighter. He had died recently, and no one knew how or why. They stood in the alley where they had grown up, hoping someone might fill in the gaps. Waylon finally asked if anyone had seen Matches recently. That was when a voice came from the shadows. Bruce stepped forward, the same Bruce they had not laid eyes on since the night he fought Sionis on the yacht. He looked worn, older than he did a month ago. He said he knew how Matches died. A week earlier, Bruce had reached out to Matches for help. Matches had become a decent forger, and Bruce needed new credentials to infiltrate the work crews building Arc M. Matches handed over the papers and admitted he had already slipped onto the site himself. He told Bruce that Arc M was nowhere near finished, yet prisoners were already inside. He had photos and videos on his phone, grainy, shaky, but undeniable. Before Bruce could ask for more details, Matches' nose began to bleed, then his ears, then everything else. He collapsed, bleeding from every pore, dead within seconds. Bruce crouched beside him, helpless, watching a friend die from something he couldn't even name. Back in Crime Alley, Bruce's friends could not believe all this, but tried to process all of it. Eddie's face went pale. Ozzy cursed under his breath. Waylon clenched his fists. Bruce told them he wanted them to know the truth, and that he intended to get justice for Matches in whatever way he could. He tried to leave, but Waylon blocked him. They needed to talk about Batman. They reminded him that he had used their skills before, even if he kept them in the dark. Bruce told them he should never have involved them in any of this. After Matches' death, he felt certain he needed to handle everything alone. Waylon told him flat out that if he kept going like this, he would end up dead. Matches' phone had given Bruce one last clue, a list of scientists who had consulted on Arc M. One name stood out among these, that of Victor Fries. He headed a company called V-Corps, headquartered in Gotham, a facility that consumed enough power to supply 10 city blocks. 3 days after Matches' memorial, Bruce aimed for V-Corps. A freak snowstorm hit the city, dropping temperatures without any warning whatsoever. Bruce glided over the streets toward the building, but halfway there, the snowfall stopped suddenly, almost as if someone flicked a switch. The GCPD immediately spotted him. Black Mask's old tech had given them toys that turned the night sky into a hunting ground. Police predator drones fired at him while he dodged between rooftops. During the chase, Alfred called from London. He had followed up on Matches' death, and the report listed the cause as a bacterial infection, but no record of that bacteria existed in any medical database. Before he could say more, Bruce ended the call. He had reached V-Corps. Inside, Bruce posed as a city engineer named Pennyworth. He moved through corridors and past guards with rehearsed confidence until he reached the CEO's office. One wall was a display of enormous ice blocks, each with a prehistoric animal frozen inside. A man in a V-Corps jumpsuit walked in. He introduced himself as the director and gave Bruce a polite nod. He accepted the Pennyworth cover story and encouraged Bruce to examine the specimens while he worked. He spoke with an odd pride, calling them curios that Victor and Nora Fries had collected. Bruce asked if the two Bruce still oversaw the company. The man smiled and said they did, in a sense. He pressed a button on the desk. A shutter lifted, revealing Victor and Nora Fries, preserved in 2 thick slabs of ice like macabre sculptures. Bruce's breath caught. The man introduced himself as Victor Fries Jr. He said his parents would have wanted this. They loved the ice. Bruce kept his tone neutral and asked what V-Corps actually did, since there were almost no public records. Victor explained that they cryogenically froze terminally ill patients until a cure was found. Bruce asked if anyone had ever been revived successfully. Victor nodded and said he had been. His parents had treated him for a childhood illness with cryotherapy. The procedure saved him. Victor turned to face his parents again, and Bruce took the opportunity to search the office. He scanned every surface he could reach without drawing attention. On the desk, he found a sample of frozen prehistoric bacteria, something that did not belong in any ordinary medical company. He lifted it slightly, enough to read the label. Behind him, Victor continued speaking in a calm voice that carried something darker beneath it. He said his parents told him cryotherapy would feel like a calm sleep. Instead, he had felt everything. The pain had been unbearable. As he spoke, his skin began to turn blue and his eyes shifted to a burning red. Bruce spun around and saw Victor's face harden into something inhuman. Victor stepped forward and grabbed Bruce by the jaw. The veins in Bruce's face turned icy blue where Victor's fingers pressed into his skin. That was the moment Bruce understood. Whatever Arc M was building, whatever Matches died from, whatever Victor Fries Jr. had become, it all tied back to something far colder and far older than Gotham knew how to handle. Issue 8, Absolute Zero Part 2. Victor Fries dragged Bruce across the floor like he weighed nothing and hauled him into a lab packed with containment tubes. The place looked less like a research facility and more like a morgue waiting for its next delivery. Victor strapped Bruce into one of the tubes and sealed it. Bruce woke up just in time to see Victor fill it with a freezing fluid. His skin tightened, his breath seized, and pain rolled through him as his body temperature plunged, pushing Bruce straight into hypothermia. Victor walked away without a glance, leaving Bruce to freeze while machines hummed around him. Cold did strange things to the mind, and Bruce's thoughts drifted to the argument he had with Wayland in the alley. Wayland had confronted him the night after Matches' memorial. He called Bruce a coward, said he was running toward death as Batman the same way Matches had run toward it as Matches. Bruce had snapped and swung first. Wayland blocked the blow easily and threw him aside. They fought in the dirt like they had as kids, only this time Wayland overpowered him in seconds. He pinned Bruce down and said that Matches had spent years letting guilt hollow him out. Matches had been the last kid Thomas Wayne ushered into the bat enclosure that day at the zoo, and after Thomas fell, Matches carried that guilt everywhere until it drowned him. Wayland asked Bruce if he felt the same burden, if he believed he survived only because someone else didn't, if he was letting that guilt steer him toward the same end. Bruce had not answered. Now, half frozen in a tube, he forced himself to reach for the batarang hidden in his gauntlet. His fingers barely worked, but he managed to slip the blade into the seam and hammer it with a weak strike. The glass cracked. He struck again and again. The tube shattered, the fluid spilled out, and Bruce tumbled onto the metal floor. He fought through the pain, pulled himself up, and suited up with whatever gear he could salvage. He followed the trail of ice into Victor's office. Victor stood in front of a massive screen and spoke to someone on the other end of a call. Bruce paused long enough to hear the truth. The snowstorm over Gotham was artificial. Every flake carried a genetic marker that harvested DNA from anyone it touched. Victor reported that they had collected profiles from 92% of the city. His tone suggested he expected to hit 100 soon. He called this progress. Bruce kicked the door off its hinges and roared into the room with a flamethrower. The jet of fire forced Victor backward, but Victor's skin frosted over instantly, and the flames slid off him like water. Bruce advanced anyway, but the hypothermia clung to him and slowed every movement. Victor moved with impossible strength and precision, tossing Bruce through a set of cabinets. Then he pressed a button and the containment tubes in the lab opened. The frozen patients stepped out, their skin pale blue, their eyes blank. Whatever Victor had done to them, they obeyed him completely. They descended on Bruce as one collective body. He tried to fight them off, but every blow felt weaker than the last. They clawed, grabbed, and pinned him from every every angle. Victor watched like a proud father admiring his children. Bruce's vision blurred. He remembered Wayland's voice in the alley, rough but honest. Crime alley people were survivors, and Bruce was clearly one of them. Wayland had asked him directly if he wanted to die. Bruce had told him no. Acting on his impulses, Bruce tore free long enough to dive through a window. The glass shattered, and he fell hard into the snow outside. He stumbled to his feet and retreated into the night. Once he had enough distance from V-Corps, he called Wayland. The call went to voicemail. Bruce warned him that something strange lived in the snowfall, that he should gather everyone and meet as soon as possible. Bruce ended the call and kept moving. Wayland never heard that message. While he locked up Croc's gym for the night, 3 men in dark suits approached him. They struck before he could respond. The blow knocked him cold. They drew his blood, ran a quick test, and whispered to each other. The results were perfect. Exactly what they wanted. They lifted his unconscious body, loaded him into a vehicle, and drove straight toward Arc M. Bruce had been right. Something new lurked beneath Gotham's snow, and now it had taken Wayland. Issue 9. Abomination. Part 1. Neutral Bialia never hosted peace. It hosted diplomats and pretended the carpet could hide a century of blood. Yet on that night, 2 men who had inherited a war decided they were tired of passing its weight to their children. The leaders of Karak and Kandak met in a quiet hotel room after years of avoiding each other's eyes across battlefields. Each had lost family. Each had buried too many. They kept the meeting private, left the guards outside, and spoke like men who wanted to end something broken, to fix it instead of winning it. Hours later, they reached a deal both sides could accept. History would record this night as the end of a pointless war. They agreed to announce it the next day and finally exhale. They walked toward the door with a level of relief neither had allowed themselves in decades. But before they could step out, they saw blood seeping under the door, thick and purposeful, as if something on the other side did not intend to hide. The door opened. A giant of a man entered, his body covered with tubes, muscles flexed beyond human limits. He wore a black mask that left no hint of a face beneath it. Bane. He told them calmly that one of them would die and the other would take responsibility for the killing, not because he cared about either country, but because someone wanted the war to ignite again. The Kandaki leader refused. Omar, the leader of Karak, caved instantly and offered to save himself. Bane accepted his offer and crushed the Kandaki president's skull with one hand. He told Omar to escalate hostilities in the morning. Then his phone rang. JK Holdings ordered him to fly to Gotham City. 2 weeks passed in Gotham without a single word about Wayland Jones. During those 2 weeks, Batman tore through the city's criminal underworld with obsession rather than strategy. Maroni soldiers woke up in hospitals with broken ribs and new fear. Falcone enforcers hid in basements and pretended they were out of town. Anyone with a gun or a grudge found themselves on the receiving end of a beating. Even Alfred worried Bruce was drifting too far to pull back. Not a single crook knew where Wayland was. So Bruce moved to the other side of the line. He reached out to Barbara Gordon. She still had the mask he abandoned weeks earlier, the one linked to a communicator he hoped she wouldn't destroy. She hadn't. They met at the Gotham Zoo. Snow covered the paths, untouched and quiet. Barbara admitted she was surprised he called her. Bruce told her she remained one of the few cops in Gotham he knew was worth the badge. She handed him the file she pulled from the system. It was thin, barely more than a paragraph. According to the official record, Wayland had been arrested for breaking curfew and sent to Arc M. Bruce met his friends and Alfred and laid everything out. They listened in disbelief. No one sent a man to a maximum security prison for breaking curfew. Harvey pointed out something worse. The city had seized Wayland's property through eminent domain. That meant no one expected him to return. Eddie sat down and refused to believe a curfew violation could lead to an indefinite sentence. Alfred told them about rumours circulating in intelligence circles, whispers about the arcs and what happened inside them. Bruce added what he overheard Victor Freeze Jr. say about the snow collecting genetic data. The pieces began to fit together in a way none of them liked. Ozzy asked how Arc M could be fully functional when construction had barely started a few months earlier. Harvey revealed that JK Industries had purchased the land long before the project went public. A 19th century hospital once stood there before it burned down. Arc M had been growing in the shadows ever since, built on old ventilation shafts and pipes no one had inspected in decades. Bruce had already studied the blueprints. He believed he found a viable entry point. Eddie nodded and said he could build something to disrupt the prison's internal surveillance. Harvey promised that once they rescued Waylon, he could slip him into witness protection in Metropolis. Ozzy stared at the floor. Then he said the smartest and most terrified thing in the room. They should flee Gotham. Leave now. Let Hill and his allies handle their own mess. Bruce snapped. Not a verbal slip, a full roar. The room froze. Ozzy held his ground and said that although the plan sounded insane, insanity didn't make it wrong. Elsewhere in Gotham, Jim Gordon and Martha Wayne cleared out their campaign office. The news played in the background, full of commentary about Hill's new policies, like more checkpoints, more surveillance, more arrests. Martha told Jim he needed to speak out. He replied that his time in the spotlight had passed. He wanted something quiet. He told her it was her turn to lead. Martha said she had no interest in the mayor's office, but Jim assured her he would support her no matter what she chose. Bruce and Alfred slipped into the Batmobile and drove underwater toward Ark M's island. The journey was long, silent, and cold. Absolutely as it should have felt like. When they surfaced, Bruce swam through the dark water and Alfred guided him through a network of underwater caverns until he reached the main pipeline that fed into the base of the island. Bruce climbed the pipe, the rock face wet under his gloves. When he reached the point where the pipe entered solid stone, he cut his way through. Alfred told him he was still at least 100 meters below the actual prison. Bruce was extremely determined, and the next thing we know, he dropped into the pipe and crawled through it. Soon he found a grate. Through it, he saw something massive. The Ark M facility sprawled across a cavern larger than any structure he'd infiltrated. The surface-level prison was nothing more than a shell. The real Ark M lived underground, hidden from satellites and human eyes. Bruce dropped down into the complex. The moment he landed, his line to Alfred cut out. He walked through silent hallways lit by dim, flickering bulbs. A window on his left held a bat skeleton the size of a man. The bones gleamed under yellow light. Before he could examine it further, something moved. A kick slammed into his chest, sent him backwards, and he hit the wall hard. Bane stood in front of him with no urgency, as if the attack meant next to nothing. Bruce reached for his belt. Bane didn't move. In fact, he invited Bruce to try again. Bruce hurled a bat thumb and stabbed it into Bane's chest. Next, he told Bruce to come closer, so Bruce charged and punched him with everything he had left. Bane blocked the strike without effort and delivered a nerve strike that dropped Bruce's arm instantly. Then he immobilized the other arm, then a leg. Every attack Bruce made earned a calm, precise counter that took something else from him. Bruce said he could take him with one leg. Bane tilted his head. He told Bruce he hadn't activated the steroids yet. Then he engaged the system. His muscles expanded. His frame doubled in size. The tubes pumped faster. Bane lifted Bruce with one hand like he weighed less than a coat and said it was time to prepare him for surgery. Bruce realized two things at once. Bane wasn't the final threat of Ark M. He was the guard dog, the henchman, the muscle, and nothing more. This guy was not the brains behind whatever was happening, and this led to the other realization. If Bane wasn't it, there had to be someone far worse waiting deeper in that facility. Issue 10, Abomination, Part 2. Bruce woke up naked on the cold floor of a cell in Ark M with a sedation drip still stuck to his arm. According to the doctor's notes, he shouldn't have opened his eyes for another 48 hours, yet here he was, shivering, barefoot, and painfully aware of every bruise Bane left on him. They had removed most of the weapons he kept inside his suit and under his skin, like small blades, wires, tools, etc. But they missed one thing. It was the lockpick lodged in the roof of his mouth. He tongued it loose, spat it into his palm, and opened the cell door with hands that barely stopped trembling. He pushed into Ark M's dark corridors. The lights worked in patches, flickering faint yellow on concrete that felt older than the hospital that once stood here. A glass-fronted cage sat in one of the hallways, the kind used for research displays. Inside it rested a massive egg, almost as tall as Bruce. It sat under a plaque that read, "Helfiger Experiment," as if that explained anything. He didn't stop long. He kept moving until he stumbled into a place labelled KLAY, Biome. If Ark M had a lower circle of hell, this looked like it. The floor was a fused mass of bodies. Faces, torsos, limbs, and their skin stretched until each person merged into the next. As he stepped forward, dozens of hands clawed at him from below. The bodies writhed, reaching and dragged him down. Before he could tear free, Bane stepped out of the dark and drove a heavy strike into the side of his head. The world rolled into black. 45 days passed. The cell lights barely changed, so time didn't feel real. Bruce barely moved, barely spoke. The orderlies believed he had given up. They didn't know him well enough to understand he was waiting. Most prisoners screamed, begged, or tried to run. Bruce stayed still. When they entered his cell to drag him off for more procedures, he greeted them with knuckle dusters he had made from his own teeth. He slammed one orderly into the wall and broke another's jaw. Before the last man could shout an alert, Bruce lit the charge he kept hidden in his toilet. The mix of urine and guano he collected from the bats roosting in the cell had fermented into a crude explosive. The blast tore open the wall. Bruce ran into the hallway again. He passed the Hellfigure cage. This time the egg had cracked open. Something had escaped. He didn't stop to meet it. He took a different route that led him to a vertical shaft lined with metal panels. He climbed until his arms felt raw. The vent opened at the top into a dense, humid forest. The air felt wrong. He realized he had reached the Isley ecosystem. The trees looked normal until he moved closer. Human eyes stared back at him from the trunks. Mouths pressed against bark in silent screams. Their branches coiled as if ready to grab. One tree lashed out with vines and wrapped them around Bruce's torso. He tried to rip himself free, but the vines dug deeper into him. Then the forest parted, and humanoid figures came into view, their bodies shaped from bark and roots. They spoke in one voice, saying, "The green wants out." One creature lunged and opened its mouth wide enough for tendrils to erupt forward. They plunged toward Bruce's eyes, ears, nose. Before the vines reached him, a giant hand crushed the creature's skull. Bane stood behind it. He tore another apart, tossed a third against a tree, and then took Bruce by the neck. He throttled him once, and the lights went out again. On day 91, Bruce returned from 2 weeks of surgeries. He had been the first subject out of 27 to survive the full cycle. Most died. The rest cracked too early to be useful. Bruce endured everything they threw at him. His hair was gone. Green scars webbed across his arms, chest, and back. He walked with a dead stare. Dr. Arkham claimed Bruce had finally broken, but Bane wasn't convinced. He believed Bruce still kept a piece of himself buried under the exhaustion. To test that theory, Arkham placed Bruce's batsuit and belt inside the cell. When Bruce saw them, he backed into the corner like the suit was a threat. He yelled at it, told it to leave him in peace, said winning was impossible. He covered his face and refused to look at it. The guards laughed. Arkham folded his arms. Bane watched silently. Then Bruce stopped trembling. He stood. He reached for the belt. He touched the suit. And he put it back on like he had never taken it off. He broke out again. This escape sent him into the Langstrom wing, the one he had heard screams from but never seen. Rows of animal-human hybrids paced in cages. Their bones jutted at impossible angles. Wings sprouted from shoulders. Tails twitched. Teeth overlapped in jagged rows. When they saw him, they begged him to kill them. The scientists inside the observation cage took notes. Bane entered without warning. He waded through the hybrids, crushing them one by one. He told Bruce this was mercy, that he was sparing them the pain Bane once endured. Bruce tried to back away, but Bane dragged him across the room and hurled him into another cage. The glass shattered and Bruce tumbled across the base of a giant egg. The shell cracked beneath him. The egg split open. A reptilian creature the size of a motorcycle crawled out, screeching. Its tail swung with a single sharp motion and caught Bane in the chest, throwing him into the scientist's booth. Glass shattered and the booth collapsed under Bane's weight. The scientists tried to escape, but the reptile dropped on them and swallowed them whole. Bruce recognized the creature, not by its face, which was far gone, but by its stance, its eyes, its instinctive way of moving. Waylon. Bruce stepped forward. Waylon grabbed him by the throat, then paused. His grip loosened. He lowered Bruce and nudged him with his snout. Bruce climbed onto his back. Waylon turned and sprinted toward the rock wall. His claws dug into the stone and hauled them upward. They burst into a sewer tunnel and vanished into the dark. Back in Ark M's ruin of a lab, Dr. Arkham stepped over the bodies and turned to Bane. He asked if Bane was excited for the final phase. Bane rose, blood dripping off his mask, and said yes, because now he would get to break Batman completely. Issue 11, Abomination, Part 3. Bane's return to Gotham felt less like a man entering a city and more like a storm re-entering a coastline it had already ruined once. Alfred noticed it before anyone else. He had spent weeks trying to keep his distance from the war Bruce insisted on fighting, but the sight of Bane coming back into Gotham with all his wrath pulled the breath out of him. He stood in the dark of his apartment and muttered to himself that he should have warned Bruce. He should have told him who Bane truly was, what shaped him, and why Bruce had no idea what kind of opponent he now faced. Bane had not come from privilege or ideology. He had come from a place carved up by outsiders for centuries. Santa Prisca, a Caribbean island wealthy in resources and poor in everything that shielded a country from foreign greed. His father had led Cielos Libres, a rebel movement that stretched across generations. They were supposed to reclaim the island's freedom, restore peace, and end the cycle of conquest. That dream lasted until Bane reached adulthood. They stormed the capital, held it for 3 days, and fell to foreign forces that treated Santa Prisca like a mine that had to remain open at any cost. Those who survived were shipped to Peñaduro, the prison where hope rotted faster than bodies. Bane spent 11 years in that pit, when nothing was left but the hardest parts of the original rebellion. He led them out. They broke through cells that were never meant to open again, stole a boat, and sailed home. They expected a battle, a counter-invasion, an army on the beach. Instead, a single man stood waiting, pale skin, green veins, a white suit, the Joker. The Joker took Bane aside and told him the truth the rebels never accepted. You see, Santa Prisca would never be left alone. Too many countries profited from its misery. Even if the rebels seized it again, rebuilt it, restored peace, the world would come clawing back for its minerals. Bane agreed. He knew the history and he knew the pattern. The Joker then offered a bargain. He would use his influence, money and reach to protect Santa Prisca forever. Independence, prosperity, security, all guaranteed. In return, Bane would serve him. The Joker's smile never wavered. Bane nodded once. The deal was struck. The Joker left the island and never returned. Before he did, he whispered one more instruction: kill your father. Prove loyalty. Bane executed the order. From then on, Bane became the Joker's instrument, not a henchman, not a thug, but the very extension of will. He toppled governments, assassinated ministers, bombed compounds, and removed anyone who interfered with the Joker's plans. Each job proved his worth. Each success opened the door to the next stage of improvement. The Joker's doctors experimented on him with venom, a super steroid that rewrote the body and sharpened the mind. Bane survived everything they put him through. His muscles doubled in density, his pain tolerance rose to obscene levels, and his mind no longer forgot a single detail. Every style of combat, every weapon, every tactic. He memorized them all. He became a walking archive of violence, shaped with precision and fed with purpose. Alfred pressed a hand to his own face and imagined Bruce facing that. Bruce, stubborn and hopeful in all the wrong moments, would fight Bane with everything he had. He would refuse backup. He would refuse compromise. He would try to outthink and outmove a man who already knew every counter, every trap, every strike Bruce would attempt. Alfred saw it clearly. Bruce would lose, no matter what. Worse, he saw what came after. Bane would not kill Bruce outright. That wasn't his style. He would drag Bruce's broken body to the same doctors who molded him. They would strap Bruce into the same machines, infuse him with the same venom, and force him through the same agony. If Bruce survived, Bane would make him the same offer the Joker had once made to him. Accept the power, accept the responsibility, become the hero Gotham needed, build a city as clean and bright as Santa Prisca had become under the Joker's protection. But that fantasy died the moment Alfred pictured Bruce's reaction. Bruce would never accept it. Even nearly dead and hardly alive, he would fight the idea with every part of himself. He would reject the venom, reject the logic, reject the future Bane wanted to hand him. Bruce would rather bleed out on the floor than let himself be remade in someone else's image. And that meant Bane would go for the next option. Break the man by breaking his anchors. Bane didn't hurry, and it wasn't like he needed to either. He followed them calmly, knowing each one represented another piece of Bruce Wayne's resistance, and he intended to break every one of them to get the man he wanted. In that moment, Gotham wasn't bracing for a fight, it was bracing for a reckoning, and Bane intended to deliver it piece by piece. Issue 12, Abomination. Part 4, Wayland carried Bruce through the harbour tunnels with the ease of someone who no longer knew his own strength. His skin was scaled, his breathing heavy and guttural, but his voice still sounded like the friend Bruce grew up with. Well, almost. He begged Bruce to save him, to fix him, to end the agony that Arc M had carved into his body and mind. Bruce held his face and promised him a cure, but Wayland didn't want hope anymore. He shoved his snout against Bruce's forehead and demanded the one thing Bruce couldn't give, and it was called death. Bruce pulled a blade from his belt and steadied it above Wayland's skull. His hand trembled. He forced himself to push, but at the last moment he angled the blade away. Wayland grabbed the knife and tried to drive it into his own skull. Bruce blocked him, the two wrestling in the ankle-deep water until Bruce kicked Wayland hard enough to break his grip. Wayland threw his head back and roared in frustration. He told Bruce he should have left him in Arc M and dove into the dark water, vanishing into the currents that fed the city's sewers. Bruce, exhausted and half frozen, collapsed alone on the wet concrete. He woke up 20 days later on the cave floor. Alfred sat beside him with a medical tray, looking like he had aged 10 more years. He told Bruce that he found him unconscious near the back computer, barely alive. Arc M's surgeons had left a venom delivery system embedded into Bruce's brain and spine. He needed rest, real rest. Bruce insisted he didn't have the luxury. Too much had happened. Too many people were hurt, and Bane was still out there. Alfred looked at him for a long moment, then stepped aside and let him go. Bruce left the cave on foot, refusing to take the bike because his body wasn't steady enough for it. Halfway across the city, a sharp, needle-like pain shot through his skull and down his arm. His veins glowed bright green under the skin for an instant, then faded. He sucked in a breath and forced himself to keep walking. When he reached Martha's apartment, she opened the door and slapped him before pulling him into a hug so tight it hurt. She told him that while he was gone, Ozzy had been attacked. Bruce went straight to the hospital. Ozzy lay in traction, every bone in his body broken and healing wrong. His face barely looked like a face. His voice was a strangled rasp whenever the pain meds dipped. Bruce didn't need to ask who did it. Only one man crushed a person that thoroughly and left them alive. He asked Leslie Tompkins if Harvey had seen Ozzy. Leslie pointed him to the next room. Harvey sat propped against pillows. His skull had been split down the centre. The left half burned so deeply the skin would never heal properly. Bruce barely recognised him. Harvey told Bruce that when they were kids, Officer Flass always warned him that his friends would drag him down, and look how that worked out. Bruce apologised, and Harvey told him flat and honest that it was Bruce's fault. Then he waved him off and said if it helped, he only hated him half the time. Bruce left the room and headed to Eddie's workshop next. The lights were on and the metal shutters half open, which should have been a bad sign, but Eddie greeted him with a cheerful grin. He said he wasn't hurt. Bruce exhaled in relief, until Eddie turned his head slightly. The entire back half of his skull was gone. Cables slid directly into his exposed brain, pulsing faintly. Eddie explained, still smiling, that Bane had challenged him to a gentleman's riddle contest. Eddie lost. Bane rewarded him by squeezing his head so hard he blinded him, damaged his frontal lobe, and tore out a sizable chunk of bone. Eddie said it proudly, as if Bane had done him a favour. He even taped part of his robot owl's head onto his own, wires hanging down like tangled hair. Blood had dried down his neck. Bruce told him he needed a hospital. Before he could take a step toward him, another venom surge hit, this time in his left arm, the veins glowing and swelling. Eddie tilted his head and asked Bruce what he planned to do now, because clearly Bane had challenged him too. Bruce staggered back to the cave and called his contact in the Red Hood gang, telling them to stand down. No more weapons, no more interference. Alfred listened quietly. Bruce said Alfred had been right. He should have taken Black Mask's money and ended it there. Alfred then told Bruce he couldn't go backwards. He could only go through. Bruce snapped that Bane broke his friends. Alfred replied, calm as stone, that yes, he did. And now Bruce had to decide whether he'd let Bane break him too. The alarm blared before Bruce could answer. Something had breached the outer hatch. Alfred grabbed a shotgun. Bruce armed himself with 2 bat thumbs and a blade. inside, and they moved through the cave like they were heading into war. They expected Bane. Who else could breach the cave? But instead, a long mechanical tendril wrapped itself around Alfred's neck and yanked him off the floor. A figure dropped from the shadows, silent and quick. Sleek suit, featureless helmet, cat ears. Bruce froze. Selina landed beside Alfred's limp body, and Bruce demanded to know what she was doing in his home. The helmet tilted toward him, and even without seeing her eyes, he felt the smirk beneath it. Selina Kyle had returned to Gotham, and she hadn't come quietly. Issue 13, Abomination. Part 5. Bruce immediately starts demanding answers. Selina stood there like she'd been expecting the interrogation and told him straight that Martha called her the moment he vanished. She came back because someone had to help. That explanation barely settled before Alfred groaned awake on the floor. The moment his eyes focused on Selina, he stiffened and said her name like it was an international crime alert. Catwoman, the mercenary no one trusted, with a reputation that stretched from Gotham to Malaysia, where she apparently did something so bad Alfred wouldn't even repeat it. He warned Bruce not to trust her under any circumstances. Bruce cut him off and said he didn't need the lecture. Selina was leaving. Now she left. They ended up in his apartment anyway, and by sunrise neither of them had slept. Selina traced the scars Arc M left across his torso, the thin green fissures, the surgical punctures, the places where the venom network sat under his skin. She asked what they had done to him, but he asked her if that was what she actually wanted to talk about. She admitted it wasn't. He nodded at her helmet and said it looked a lot like black masks. She said that wasn't the conversation she wanted either. Fair enough. So he changed the subject and asked her if she wanted to go on a date. She smirked, because only Bruce Wayne would call a felony a date, and they headed to Amusement Mile, the abandoned pier now acting as the Red Hood gang's little kingdom. The moment they stepped inside, half the Red Hoods circled them with weapons raised. They didn't even bother with the usual theatrics. They just told Batman he wasn't welcome. When he'd tried to pull them back weeks ago, they made it clear they didn't take orders, not even from Gotham's favourite masked engineer. Bruce told them he wouldn't leave until he spoke to their leader. That was all it took. They charged. Bruce moved through them with his usual precision, but Selina was in a different league altogether. She weaved through the crowd and put half of them down with silent tranquilizer darts. It almost looked too easy until a lone Red Hood on top of the Ferris wheel aimed an RPG straight at them. Bruce shoved Selina aside before she could react. That shove opened the valve inside him. The venom in his bloodstream surged like a fire alarm. His veins flared green, his pupils shrank, and he charged the Ferris wheel supports. The Red Hood fired the rocket. Bruce didn't duck or dodge. He slammed into the metal beams with full force and snapped them clean. The wheel tilted, groaned, and fell into the water with the shooter still inside. The rocket veered off and detonated harmlessly in the distance. The remaining Red Hoods stumbled back and pointed at him like he was a demon. They said their leader warned them about monsters like him. For a moment, Bruce looked like he agreed with them. Then Selina touched the back of his neck, whispered for him to breathe, and he came back to himself. Bruce told them the truth. Arc M made monsters. They nearly broke him, but now he was out, and he would tear down Bane, Arc M, and every person who built it. If they wanted to fear him, fine. If they wanted to follow him, even better. At that point, their leader stepped forward, a Red Hood with a bat in one hand and bubblegum in her mouth. Harley Quinn. She sized Bruce up, spat her gum on the ground, and said if he planned to burn Arc M to ash, the Red Hoods would help light the match. Meanwhile, inside Arc M, Dr. Arkham and her technicians pumped more venom into Bane's already monstrous frame. They told him that was it, the maximum infusion he could take without his body collapsing. Bane said it wouldn't matter. Soon, Batman would take his place, and he could finally go home to Santa Prisca. Arkham asked him if he genuinely believed the Joker would release him. Bane hesitated. Eventually, he muttered that the Joker had to. Even he didn't sound convinced. Before she could push it further, a technician called Arkham over. Gotham's broadcast screens flickered. Batman had hacked the feed. He challenged Bane to meet him at the old Veterans Arena. If Bane won, Bruce would return to Arc M willingly and let them remake him into whatever Bane wanted. But Bane wouldn't win. Bruce made that part clear. Back in the cave, Selina begged him not to use the venom during the fight. She had seen too many mercenaries destroy themselves on it. Bruce insisted that venom was the only way to stand a chance. She told him he didn't need to do this alone. He snapped that he wouldn't drag her into the same fate as Ozzy, Harvey, or Eddie. She reminded him that she once told him unfair rules didn't need to be followed. He shot back that she didn't get to where she was by following rules anyway. She agreed, but said he was better than her. He said he wasn't anymore, and if she couldn't handle who he needed to become, she should leave. The words hit. She walked out. Alfred dryly told her not to let the door hit her on the way. Bruce loaded the Batmobile with a cooler of raw meat, which said enough about who he expected to meet down there. Alfred stopped him before he left. He told Bruce that if he truly wanted to win, he needed to bury the man he used to be and become the creature the fight demanded. Bruce gave no answer. He drove through the sewer tunnels toward the arena. As the Batmobile roared past, a huge shape rose from the dark water. Waylon followed him silently, watching his friend race toward a fight neither of them were fully ready for. Issue 14, Abomination, Part 6. All right, let's settle in, because this is the point everything in Absolute Batman has been circling like a shark in dark water. Every scar on Bruce's body, every body Bane broke, every bad decision, every flashback, every secret that should have stayed buried, all of it funnels into this final fight. No tricks left, no more misdirection, no more "we'll deal with it tomorrow." It all comes down to Absolute Batman versus Absolute Bane in an arena built for gladiators and ghosts. It opens with Alfred, steady voice, old soldier tone, asking the one question Bruce has avoided his whole life. "It's the fight of your life, kid. Are you ready?" Behind him stands Edward Nygma, or whatever's left of the man after Arc M carved his skull open and replaced half his brain with wires. If you thought getting advice from Alfred was stressful, imagine the Riddler eyeballing you with a half-metal face while Alfred checks your pulse. Alfred reminds Bruce there's only enough venom in his body for 2 infusions. 2. One now, one in the arena. Bruce says he's listening, but his mind is drifting to the people who paid the price for his crusade long before he did. Waylon, who begged Bruce to kill him because he couldn't stand being trapped inside his new body. Selina, walking away and telling him to take care of himself when both of them knew he never does. Two-Face, staring through the cracked ruin Bane left behind and telling him he only hates him half the time. Eddie, making jokes about Bruce's poverty even as blood soaked through the metal plate drilled into his skull. These were his people once. They're still his people now, and Bane took all of them off the board and left them bent, burned, or rebuilt into something unrecognizable. Alfred explains the plan again. 1 infusion now, test your system, then the real one in the ring. Bruce doesn't hesitate this time. He says the words he always says when nothing is left. Let's go to war. Before the infusion hits, the scene cuts to Gotham media. Mayor Hill, corrupt, smirking, trained liar, tells his citizens there are no monsters under Gotham. The only monster is Batman. Hill urges everyone to obey curfew and stay away from the Veterans Arena, insisting nothing will happen tonight. The broadcast ends. Hill turns to Bullock the second he's off camera and mutters that the fight starts at midnight and no one gets within 10 blocks. Bullock wanted to ask who ordered that. Hill simply says, "The order came from above." Anyone who's followed this story knows above doesn't mean Washington or Gotham's council or any agency with a badge. It means the Joker, the absolute Joker, who sits somewhere out of frame, carving up continents like a butcher with too much free time. The story shifts again, this time to Selina, alone, staring at Bruce's mask. She speaks to it the same way she'd speak to him if he hadn't pushed her away, quietly, with a hint of panic and maybe even fear she'll never admit to. "I hope you have a good plan." Then the focus shifts to Bane, mid-prep, mid-infusion, mid-transformation. Arkham tells him Bruce likely has 1 venom charge left. Bane says he's counting on it. If Bruce survives this fight, he'll be Arc M's next project. And once that happens, Bane claims, he will finally go home. Arkham asks if he truly believes the Joker will release him. Bon, world's most famous liar to himself, says he has to believe it. "One more fight," he says. "One more and he's done." Now, the book pulls off one of the smartest narrative tricks Snyder has used in this run. It mirrors this fight with an older one. Waylon Jones, the young boxer who would one day become Croc, once went against the reigning champ, Bibbo Bibowski. Back then, even Bruce doubted him. The crime families doubted him. Falcone paid for Waylon to take a fall in the 7th. And when Bruce confronted Waylon with the plan, Waylon fired Bruce as his coach because he wanted at least one fight he didn't lose by someone else's arrangement. arrangement. He wanted a corner that believed in him. He didn't have one. Bruce does. Cut to the arena. Bane walks in and roars for Batman to face him. The lights blaze on. Bruce stands in the center, calm as an executioner. Alfred's voice comes through the comms. Wear him down. Make him burn through everything. Then use your venom. Save it until he's empty. Bruce tells him to stop talking. He calls Harley. Harley tells him to make Bane famous. Hits a button and sends a fleet of drones spinning above the arena, broadcasting the fight live to every screen in Gotham. Hill's nightmare, his lie, undone in real time for the entire city. Bane welcomes the audience, calls it a spectacle, says he hopes Bruce learned something new since their last encounter. To be fair, the last time they fought, Bruce got crushed so fast it barely counted as a fight. But Batman has one skill no one in Gotham has mastered: preparation. Bruce presses a detonator. A nearby building detonates and collapses into the arena, crushing Bane under tons of debris. Bruce calls that move "Welcome to Gotham," back to the old boxing match. Waylon Jones goes in swinging, surprising the crowd, surprising Bibowski, and surprising himself. Southpaw, controlled, precise. For a moment, he even looks like the favorite. The crowd wakes up. They see possibility. Cut back to the present. The Batmobile rockets into the arena. Alfred is behind the wheel. Bruce fires harpoons that bind Bane in place long enough for the Batmobile to slam into him head-on. The audience gasps. Bane staggers, but doesn't fall. Back to Waylon. He holds strong through round 3, still landing punches, still in it, proving he wasn't the pushover Falcone paid for. Back to the arena. Alfred realizes something terrifying. Bane heals too fast. His muscles are larger than ever. His speed is unnatural. His eyes are full of something worse. They are filled with clarity. Bane roars, flexes, and tears free. He advances with his fists clenched like boulders. Alfred narrates over the comms, and for the first time, we hear how he sees Bruce in combat. Not as a boy, not as a weapon, as a prodigy of violence. A man born for this. Bruce lands blow after blow. At one point, he knocks out Bane's eye. It regrows seconds later, but Bane adapts faster. He grabs Bruce, lifts him, slams him into the concrete again and again. Bruce looks tiny in his hands. Bane tells him they're not so different, says Bruce reminds him of himself when he was young, says their fun is over. Use your venom, he growls. It's your only move. Bruce does something no one expects. He grins, says, "Not quite," and signals Harley. Harley yells for them to release the green machine. The cage bursts open, and Waylon Jones, what's left of him, charges out. Massive, reptilian, terrifying in scale. The thing that used to be his friend goes straight for Bane with a roar that shakes the arena. He tears chunks out of Bane's flesh and swallows them whole. Bane pumps fresh venom into his system. His muscles snap larger. He regenerates instantly, but Waylon keeps clawing, ripping, devouring. The two giants slam into the ground, again and again. Alfred watches all of this and keeps narrating, and every line hits like a brick. Waylon, the boy who fought without a corner, now fights for the future of the only friend who ever believed in him. Bane, the monster who broke everyone else, finally faces a monster he helped create. And Bruce, bruised, battered, breath-ragged, gets back on his feet, because the fight isn't over. Not yet. And because he promised Waylon once, long before Arc M took everything, that he wouldn't let him fight alone. Bruce hacks into Bane with that chest axe of his, tearing into muscle and tubing, and for once he doesn't bother with grand declarations. No clever one-liner, no speech. He even says it out loud that there will be no fancy quotes tonight. That's where he is mentally now, too tired for theatrics. Bane, on the other hand, has an entire library inside his skull. He looks down at Batman, barely flinches at the damage, and quotes, "Toward gnats and fleas we should show no pity," before swatting Bruce away like something beneath notice. Batman goes sailing, and the book makes that punch feel like a full stop. From there, the comic continues its cross-cut structure between two different rings. One is the Veterans Arena, with Bruce and Bane tearing each other apart. The other is years earlier, where Waylon Jones fought heavyweight champ Bibbo Bibowski in a dingy boxing venue. That fight returns here as commentary and metaphor. The announcer narrates how Bibbo storms back in the later rounds, and how Jones starts to fade. Falcone watches from the stands, grinning, betting on Jones to fall in the 7th, and telling his people to make sure the punches land hard enough for the pain to reach the nosebleeds. On the canvas, Wayland looks alone, only bright lights and heavy fists. Back in the present, Bruce hits the ground hard in the arena and ends up flung into the upper levels, practically in the nosebleeds himself. Harley runs up to him while Bane wrecks Wayland down below. She doesn't give a rousing monologue or promise him victory. She leans over him and says the one thing he actually needs to hear: get up. That's it. Then she adds, now get back in there and save that alligator. Bruce corrects her. He's a crocodile, but he gets the message. While Wayland rips into Bane with claws and teeth, Alfred cuts in over the comms. He's watching the venom regulators spike again and again, and he's worried. He tells Bruce that Bane keeps pumping his system full of more serum, and at this point, Alfred doesn't know if Bane even has a maximum anymore. Bruce asks what Alfred's point is. Alfred tells him straight that the original plan hinged on Bane hitting a ceiling. If venom pushed him past his limits, his body would collapse. That trick worked on the Bane of the main DC universe. This version seems different. Alfred suggests using their own venom dose now, not later, so Bruce at least has a chance of leaving the arena alive. Bruce refuses to deviate. He says they stick to the plan. Harley checks in with her Red Hood crew on the outer ring, making sure they're still breathing. They confirm they are. The gangs, the drones, the lights. These are all part of a system Bruce built to control variables. The only wild card left is Bane's biology. We cut again to the old fight. By the middle of the 7th round, Wayland Jones is hanging on by a thread. Bibbo has his signature rear naked choke locked in, the hold that usually ends careers. The announcer frames it as the end. That's when younger Bruce forces his way past security and steps close enough to the ropes for Wayland to see him. He calls his name. Wayland looks over and sees that Bruce is there now, in his corner. No money in the deal, no fix, no orders to fall this time. Someone actually believes in him. The narrative then snaps back to the present as Bruce drops back into Bane's blind spot and tears down the length of his spine with the axe. He knows where to cut. He tells Bane he has severed his spine at the thoracic level, which takes out the legs. Bane can no longer stand under his own power. Bruce says that's fine. Bane still has his arms. Then he begins to dismantle those as well, hacking into them blow by blow. Bruce narrates his own difference here. Bane always claimed they were the same. Both lost fathers, both forged by war. Bruce rejects that. He tells Bane they are not alike. Bruce didn't break his father's back or his heart. That line hits somewhere deep in whatever passes for Bane's conscience. It also enrages him. He slams more venom into his system, far beyond what Arkham's earlier charts suggested. In the control room, Arkham is glued to the monitor. She marvels as his cells move past self-repair into a state that looks embryonic, more like undifferentiated tissue than normal muscle. To her, Bane is a miracle. If Subject 27, Bruce, shares this adaptation, he would be an even greater specimen. Out in the ring, Bane starts to lose what little calm he had. He snarls that he has given everything to keep his people and his home safe. To him, life has never been anything but war. He says he is finished after this, that it is Bruce's turn now. Then he stops talking to himself and starts yelling at Bruce instead. He hammers him into the ground repeatedly. The scene cuts again to Wayland and Bibbo. The champ's choke looks final. The announcer calls it like he expects Wayland to fade. Back to the arena. Arkham's voice crackles as she tries to match science with what she sees. Bane's tissue has become something beyond human repair work. She reminds him that if Bruce shares even a fraction of this potential, he is invaluable. Bane doesn't care about that in this moment. He wants a clean test of dominance. He demands that Bruce use venom. He wants to beat Batman at his absolute peak. Alfred adds his own pressure. He begs Bruce to inject the venom. He pleads with him to survive. For Alfred, this kid is the last thing in his life that still matters, and every instinct tells him that without that extra edge, Bruce dies here. Bane roars at him again to use it. Bruce finally says, "Fine, you win." He says he will use venom. Bane thinks he has forced the Dark Knight into surrendering to the same addiction. Instead, Bruce calls out to Catwoman and tells her to take the shot. Selina lines up, and fires a venom dose into Bane from behind. She hits him square in the back. His system, already swimming with chemicals, tips past whatever hidden threshold Arkham thought existed. In the other ring, Wayland finds his last reserve of strength and flips Bibbo using the champ's own weight, sending him down and securing the win. The announcer calls it like a miracle. In Gotham's arena, Bane realizes something is wrong. He tries to tell them to stop. Then his overcharged body detonates from within, tearing itself apart under the strain. Alfred starts laughing, halfway between relief and disbelief. Years of cynicism and horror break for a moment, and he laughs like a man who forgot he could. From there, the book rewinds 2 days. Bruce sits with Eddie and Selina while the Riddler's equipment drains his body. Eddie asks how much venom he is supposed to remove. Bruce answers with 3 simple words: all of it. Every trace, every drop. He says he will beat Bane on his own terms, without the drug that turned Ark-M into a factory of living weapons. Selina listens and tells him that no matter what happens next, she is proud of him. Later, once they have finished the extraction, she gives him the only order he'll ever obey without protest: go and kick Bane's ass. The Wayland fight concludes properly in the flashback. Wayland wins. The underdog beats the champ. After the bell, he asks Bruce whether that really happened. Bruce tells him he hopes so, because he bet everything on it, including Falcone's share. He took the mob's money and wagered it on his friend. Falcone, watching this unfold, decides Bruce Wayne now has a death mark on his head. Then we move back to Alfred's closing narration over the ruins of the Bane fight. In hindsight, he says, he finally understands how Bruce won. Not through size, strength, or even planning, but through motive. Kings, generals, and warlords always assume victory is the goal. For Bruce, the fight itself is the point. He doesn't fight to win one war and retire. His conflict is older than any single campaign and as immediate as a terrified child's scream. It never truly ends. He fights because it is right for Gotham, for his friends, for the promise he made as a boy in a zoo enclosure surrounded by bats and his father's blood. Alfred admits he is grateful for the reminder. The coda reveals 2 last details. First, Selina walks away with the stolen venom in her possession. That serum is too valuable and too dangerous to disappear quietly. Second, we see Bane again, in a new state. Arkham greets him in a lab where he now exists as a brain, a spinal column, a pair of eyes, and regenerating tissues slowly rebuilding around them. She calls his cells a marvel and tells him someone wants to speak with him. The absolute Joker enters. He tells Bane that everything that happened, the loss, the explosion, the failure, is a minor setback in his eyes. Bane wanted to retire, to return to Santa Prisca and live a quiet life with his family. Joker claims that would never satisfy him. Bane needs war. So Joker, as a friend, decided to help. He reminds Bane of his father's old rebel movement, Cielos Libres, Free Skies, and says he wants Bane to feel as free as that name sounds. Free of doubt, free of attachments, free of the weight of home. Then, Joker reveals what he has done. He has wiped Santa Prisca off the map, nuked it. Everyone Bane ever fought for, every person in his bloodline, every friend he wanted to protect, gone in white light. The Abomination storyline ends not with a neat resolution, but with a new question hanging over Gotham's future. What happens when the man who gave everything for his home learns that his ally erased that home from existence? And when that man is Bane and the only person who understands that level of ruin is Batman, where does their war go next? That was in this one, guys. But do not fret, we will be back with more absolute Batman stories as and when they are released into the wild.